Welcome to Reeldeemers, where we champion the B-sides, the offbeat, and the overlooked. We've worked in and around Hollywood, so we know just how hard it is to get a movie made. This is our space to celebrate some cinematic misfits that we hope you'll enjoy as much as we do. With the recent release of the 2026 version of Masters of the Universe, your humble Reeldeemers are taking their time machine back to the 80s to revisit the original live-action adaptation. Grab your power sword, your synthesizer, and a bucket of ribs because we're diving headfirst into Canon's version of Masters of the Universe. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Bellavia, and I'm here with
Andres Anglade.
Andreas. We are children of the 80s. We were surrounded by what I would consider the golden age of cartoons. You had yourself your Transformers, your G.I. Joe, Gem, DuckTales, Smurfs, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Voltron. The list goes on and on. What are some of your favorite cartoons from that era?
Oh, definitely G.I. Joe, He-Man for sure, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh gosh, those were kind of the staples that I would watch. Snorkels was one that I would watch. What about you?
Is that it?
Oh, is it Snorks? Yeah. See, I don't even remember.
No,
Somehow
but I remember.
watched...
I almost put Snorks, but I wasn't sure if I wasn't sure how high the Snorks street cred was in 2026. But I do remember them. I do remember them. Where's the gritty Snorks reboot?
Right? Maybe we should pitch that.
Well, I grew up in a very anti-gun household, so no toys that were guns, no action figures that held guns, and that meant no Transformers or G.I. Joe for me. I was huge into swords. I loved Star Wars. I liked swashbuckling stuff with Robin Hood. I watched a shit ton of He-Man. And yes, people had lasers and blasters and that type of thing, but as long as the main hero dispensed justice with a sword, we were all good. And a weird exception were the Bond films, but I was more obsessed with the gadgets than the guns, so for some reason those got a pass, even though they were chock full of like gun violence.
Looking at G.I. Joe. In the cartoons, their guns shot lasers. So
Yeah.
that wasn't even enough for you, like to allow that in the household or no?
I was look, I was a little kid lawyer, and I was, as an only child, I was very good at arguing things, but I don't think that litigation would have passed. Technically, that's a laser, not a gun. That would have been shut down. My parents also like my mom had a thing about shows that were disturbing. If she thought it was gonna be disturbing, so I think it's not just that, but like I think if she got like one look, like any of Cobra Commander's rants probably would not have gone over well.
That's fair. But I'm glad to hear that you're a big fan of He-Man.
Yes, and even stuff like that. So you might be throwing the red flag that there was plenty of guns and stuff, but like I had Roboto, and one of the things that you could switch his arm into was a gun. They weren't going through the toys with a fine tooth comb. Maybe one snuck through here and there, but for the most part. And I have some stuff here. I'm showing Andreas that I still have some of my old figures. The toys actually live close to where I record this podcast. So I literally just had to reach over and grab them.
I love it. I had that same battle damaged armor He-Man along with the original He-Man, and that's clearly the original Skeletor.
So
this is really good stuff for people listening to the audio of this.
John, these are some vintage toys, and also I'll say credit to them. These suckers have held up for 40 years. Not that I'm still giving them as much play as I used to, but this is in fairly good condition. So hats off to Mattel. But I think that's actually an excellent intro into the history of where this film even came from, Mattel and the He-Man line. So Andreas, can you get into a little bit of that?
Well, before I get into that, I just need to say one thing. Hashtag justice for Orko. Just so you know.
Oh my gosh. Well,
the tone of this conversation and where we're going to go. And let me guess, you're team Gwildor, aren't you?
I got my Gwildor tattoo. I had to talk Larissa out of naming our son Gwildor.
I knew it.
Okay, how dare you imply? That was one of the things that we'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, so in rewatching Masters of the Universe, what I came across while watching on Tubi is something else they suggested, and what it was a documentary called Power of Grayskull: The Definitive History of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And I'm really glad I had time to watch that, because it actually gave me a very good definitive history of the toy line going into the cartoons and the movies. How He-Man started was Mattel had actually passed on the Star Wars license. Because of that, they were getting killed by Kenner in the action figure market. Kenner had the Star Wars license. So they were trying to figure out what other movies they could license. And one of them that they came up with was Conan the Barbarian. But then they found out it was going to be an R-rated film, and they couldn't do toys for R-rated movies to try to sell to children. So Mark Taylor had this sketch of a barbarian character he had come up with years ago, and he called it Torok. Roger Sweet, who's a designer at Mattel, saw that concept and took it along with some other ideas from Mark Taylor and came up with a prototype of a military man figure, a space figure, and a barbarian, which were the three main type of action figures at the time. So the barbarian figure he had created, he called He-Man. And from that, the idea of a space barbarian came to fruition. And that's how He-Man was basically created. From that, they were able to build out more and more characters. And one funny anecdote is how Battle Cat was created. As any company would, they're looking for ways to save money. So they had this tiger mold. They called molds tools. That's what they call it. So this tiger tool was made for a big gym action figure. And they were like, let's use that tiger. So someone brought up that putting the tiger next to the He-Man figure wouldn't work because it was out of scale. But one of the Mattel engineers and also the VP of marketing, Paul Cleveland, said, I don't care if you paint it green with orange stripes, just do it. We need to use the tool, just make it work. So they painted it green and added the orange stripes to show him how ridiculous it was. And he was like, that's great. They're like, it still won't work. It's as big as a horse. It's too big. And he said, so put a saddle on it. And that's how Battle Cat was born.
That's pretty awesome. And may I say, big fan. Big fan. So I'm showing to Andreas, I'm currently holding Battle Cat. And I think this is a lovely design. So I give them a lot of credit. Again,
anyone who's a fan of He-Man, I think is going to be a fan of Battle Cat. It's a great design.
I remember my mom being a big Battle Cat fan.
Did she have a preference in the Cringer form or as Battle Cat?
I think she thought it was cute that he changed from the cowardly Cringer into the valiant Battle Cat.
Oh, nice. Okay, so He-Man comes out. Kids are loving the toys. DC started producing comic books with the characters and some miniseries. And then in 1981, the FCC reversed the decision for companies to create shows based on their characters. So essentially in the 60s, the FCC said, we don't want half-hour commercials geared towards kids. Well, in 1981, Reagan and his FCC reversed that, saying the market...
Thank goodness, right?
Yeah, nothing could go wrong there. But they basically said that the marketplace, not the federal government, should determine what children can watch. And from there, we got the He-Man cartoon from Filmation. And I do want to shout out Gwen Wetzler, who's a female animation director ahead of her time at a time when female animators were looked down upon. She directed a ton of the episodes of the animated series we all love so much. Lou Scheimer was the co-founder and executive producer of Filmation, and he was very progressive in hiring female animators and crew. And I learned his favorite character was Orko.
Huh.
But not only was it his favorite character, he actually did the voice.
Oh.
Isn't that amazing? So the doc emphasizes the incredible impact that Lou Scheimer had for He-Man, and it seems like to me his name should be mentioned along with Mark Taylor and Roger Sweet in terms of the creation of the Master of the Universe. Because basically, when Filmation got involved, they just had a bunch of characters. There was no backstory other than this is a space barbarian. So I really liked how the documentary delved into that. And if you are a fan of He-Man, I absolutely recommend the documentary. Again, right now, currently it's on Tubi, and it's called Power of Grayskull, The Definitive History of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Now, I was a humongous He-Man fan. My nightly ritual was to watch He-Man in our basement. After that, I would walk upstairs and take a nap on our couch. I'd be falling asleep, and we had this big picture window that overlooked the front yard. My dad would get home from work. I would rally, we'd all have dinner together as a family, and then I'd play until bedtime. And I have such a warm nostalgia for this franchise being a part of that. But I have not gone back and watched it as an adult. I was told it just doesn't live up. And I'm like, those can live comfortably like in the past. I don't want to spoil that magic. Andres, have you seen this since you were a kid, the old cartoon?
You know, I went back, God, man, maybe a decade ago to like look at it. I remember as a kid, it felt more dark. than it was. So when I watched it, and then I did go back and watch a little bit of it for this, just because, and we'll get into it. Just because I wanted to double check certain references and memories, but I didn't watch like a full episode. I only watched parts of it.
Okay, so I think this is actually a good place to jump in. So, show's super successful. They have a spin-off movie that was a backdoor pilot, The Secret of the Sword, that introduced She-Ra, that was released theatrically. That was the first 5 episodes of the She-Ra show. And of course you're going to make a live action movie. Of course you're going to kind of jump into this. And what better studio than the house of Chuck Norris and Chuck Bronson canon? Here it is, Master Universe. Now, I'll just say, as somebody who came into this anti-gun and couldn't watch guns, I distinctly remember the trailer for this with He-Man on that like hoverboard thing, and we'll get into it, packing heat and shooting one of his lasers, and little kid me being like, "What the hell?" Like I was like upset about. So not crazy about that, but okay. So 1987's Masters of the Universe. The evil warlord Skeletor has conquered the kingdom of Eternia thanks to a transportation device called the Cosmic Key, created by our man, the Thenorian dwarf Gwildor. Skeleton and his right-hand witch, Evelyn, have captured the benevolent sorceress, and in harnessing her power, hope to channel the energy of the universe through Skeletor to make him truly all-powerful. Skeletor and his forces are opposed by He-Man, a ripped, sword-wielding do-gooder who is aided by the soldier Man-at-Arms, his daughter Teela, and the remorseful Gwildor. Escaping from Skeletor's forces using a second cosmic key, He-Man and company are transported to 80s Earth. They are separated from the cosmic key, which ends up in the possession of 2 teenagers, Julie and Kevin. Still mourning the death of her parents the year before, Julie is looking to leave town to start somewhere new, while Kevin is an unheralded musician who has to settle for performing at an event at his high school. When the teenagers play around with the key, they draw the attention of a gang of Skeletor's mercenaries, which leads to He-Man making the save. The ensuing chaos draws the attention of Detective Lubic, a cop trying to piece together what the hell is going on, and intergalactic shenanigans ensue. All right, Andreas, when did you first see Masters of the Universe?
Oh, I saw this in theaters.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was a huge fan of He-Man. He-Man was up there with any other toys that I loved. So I remember going to the theater. But I was young, man. I really don't remember what my exact response was. My initial reaction was, I remember it feeling really dark, but I think that's just because of my age. And then also being surprised at how much of it took place on Earth.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, even little kid, you realized how weird that was.
And then when did I rewatch it? Because it's pretty telling that I didn't own this growing up. You know, like other movies, I'm like, we have to buy this, we have to own this, and I'd wear out the VHS, right? But the fact that I didn't own this says that I wasn't that big of a fan of it. And I feel like as a kid, it didn't feel like a full He-Man movie to me.
Well, I think that's that. I didn't see this until I was at a friend's house, and I think, considering how much I love the property, that might sound strange, but I think even the trailer, there was a large degree of this. This was like not my He-Man. Like I was excited to rent the animated film, and I watched that. And I loved that. I loved Hordak, and I loved all the lore that came in with like She-Ra. And this was kind of like, I gave it a little bit of side eye, like, what is this? But okay, so I think we'll unpack it more. And before we jump in, I think Andreas just touched on something, going back and kind of looking at some stuff up again, because what jumps out here is the core basics of He-Man, I guess, are here. You have He-Man the hero, Skeletor the villain, the land of Eternia, supporting players like Man-at-Arms and Evelyn, but huge chunks of the He-Man mythology are missing. In the comics and the show, He-Man is the alter ego of Prince Adam, son of King Randor and Queen Marlena. The queen is from Earth. She was an astronaut. He-Man's sword transforms him from being the prince into the buff hero, and most people don't realize that they're the same person. Prince Adam had Cringer, aka Battle Cat, who makes no appearance in the film. He had a sister, Princess Andorra, who ends up being She-Ra. And there's a whole mythology of the Hordak, a villain who abducts her. Skeletor is one of Hordak's like minions. There's this whole rich tapestry that for this film, they're just like, nah, not going to happen. And I guess I get that. I also kind of miss that. And so here, do you think that's a smart move to jettison that? Because that's just a lot of stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff. Or do you think streamlining it loses some of what makes the comic and cartoon so special?
Well, I think anytime you're constrained by budget, you're going to have to lose things. I had honestly forgotten about the mother being an astronaut connection. I wish they would have explored that story. And we should say we are recording this before the 2026 Masters of the Universe film is coming out, so we don't know what they're going to tackle in that one. All I can say about that one is hashtag justice for Orko. I haven't watched any trailers. I don't know if he's in it. I hope he's in it.
That would be a foolish move. Look, I think Mechanek's in it. If Mechanek's in the movie and Orko's not in the movie, that's crazy.
I mean, I did see, that Ram Man is in it along with Mechanek. So yes.
Yeah, Orko contractually. If Orko's not in it, Orko's got to fire his agent and figure this out.
But yeah, I wish they would have explored that. I think again, like I said, with budget constraints, it's so tough. I understand them going to Earth to save money.
Oh yeah, yep. The age-old. Hey, we don't have the budget to sustain Eternia. Let's just take it to 80s Earth,
And I had read somewhere that initially they hadn't even included the Eternia scenes. And it was I believe the director who had to push for those to be added in. And that's what anchors the film.
Quick sidebar. I wasn't sure where to kind of put this in, but just there are some heinous accusations against Gary Godard, the director. Please look it up. Please do your research. Kind of don't want to focus on them for this. In one of our normal episodes, we dive in deeper. We respect that. There's a lot of alleged stuff out there, but also we respect. And actor Anthony Edwards came out, had a very heartfelt piece that he published, and we would recommend you go read that. So don't really want to touch on the direction here too much, considering some stuff that's surrounding it. But we'd feel kind of remiss not mentioning that.
Yeah.
Given the hurdles, given the budget, given that we're using I think the other thing is off-brand characters. Now let's get into it. Instead of Orko, we've got Gwildor. Dear listener, if you played a drinking game with every time they said the word Gwildor, you'd be dead. You physically could not survive this film. I don't know why he gets the most lip service out of any other character, but it's Gwildor, man. Yes, Man-at-Arms is here. Yes, Teal is here. Where's Ram Man? Where's Mechanek? And they're inventing villains for the movie? I'm pretty sure Blade wasn't in the series. I think he's a film creation.
Yeah, Blade, Swarad, and Karg are all film creations along with Gwildor. Originally, in my research, they said that She-Ra was in the film along with a lot of the other He-Man staples, but they were all cut, again, due to budget. So they came up with the idea of using a handful of known characters and then also creating some new characters for the film. And Mattel was all for that because they wanted to start selling toys.
I was going to say, is this a Transformers the movie situation where it's like, let's just make some new people?
Yeah.
And also, shout out to Sarad. I had that action figure. Yes, it shot sparks out of its mouth. Yes, it was awesome. And he's done totally dirty in this film.
Oh, yeah. I was going to bring that up. He's really done dirty here.
The mercenaries at one point are going after the teenagers, and He-Man comes in to save the day. And it's him kind of fighting them all off at the same time. And then they have to retreat, tail between their legs, back to Skeletor, and they're all groveling. And Sarad, he doesn't say a word. And Skeletor he picks him out of the bunch and he atomizes them. It's like, I don't know if that was
It's
fair.
Blade who's like, we'll try again. Please give us one more chance. And he's like, no more. He's just
Blade's a groveling wimp, proud Sarad being killed for no reason. Pissed me off as a kid to piss me off here.
But speaking of Blade, Anthony DeLongis plays Blade. And he was actually the fight and sword choreographer.
Oh, I love that.
Since he knew so much about swords and he had trained Dolph Lundgren for the film, they asked him to be Blade. And then I also learned he doubled Skeletor in the final fight scene.
Oh, that's smart.
But he couldn't really see in that crazy golden helmet. And because of the smoke they were using, that made the floor super slippery. So it was definitely a challenge. It was a challenge for him for that fight scene.
All right. Well, hats off for doing double duty. I appreciate that. Also, when he's introduced, it's like, let me introduce these mercenaries. And when he comes out, he blinks. And he doesn't look as bad. Like, the outfit's great. And hey, hats off to doing double duty and the swordman skills and all that. That's A+. That's great. But he walks out, when he steps forward, he blinks. It's just like, I don't know if this guy's got the sauce to take out He-Man.
Yeah.
Turns out he does not.
But what did you think this rewatch?
Okay, I think we watched this suspiciously close to us watching Ewoks: The Battle for Endor, and some stuff jumped out. Sword and sorcery and sci-fi, an actor from Willow in a prominent role, an orphan being lured away by a shape-shifting witch, and the climax involving a sword versus somebody wielding a staff. So I don't know, it's just kind of odd little universe giving you something side to side. I think this is a fun flick. We never cover anything that we don't kind of like champion to a certain amount. This is a good pizza and a Pepsi flick. So it's like, yes, it doesn't hit a certain level. I don't even know if I'd call this good, but it's fun and it's legit fun. I think there's ironic fun, like Birdemic. That's ironic fun. I don't think anyone's actually into the bird chaos of Birdemic, but it's charming. It's a charming. If you're looking for a WTF movie night, that's it. I think this is a movie trying to be fun that is legit fun. That is, it hits the ground running. Yes, they're going to 80s, Earth to save money. I like the fun I like the chaos that they, them attacking a high school. All right, them like destroying a record store. Great, sign me up. Detective Lubic trying to wrap his head around what's going on here. There's a charm present, even though it's cutting corners, even though Skeletor's mask is cool, but kind of looks like a Halloween mask, and you can't escape that. As a kid, I was like, that's a good time. And as an adult, I'm like, all right, fun time. So I do enjoy this. And with a bottle of Pepsi and a pizza, put my feet up, I can enjoy this any day of the week.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a fun, charming fantasy movie. My biggest takeaway though is that you could have given the characters any other names and it would have still worked.
It's got big Temu He-Man energy.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But
I don't disagree at all. And also it's interesting. Dolph Lundgren's He-Man, we should probably talk about that, and Frank Langella's Skeletor. With there being no Prince Adam, he's just daring good guy He-Man. There's no, in another movie, it'd be Prince Adam, and he'd find that really he had the heroics in him all along. He didn't need to be He-Man to turn into, there'd be some sort of story. Or if it's Peter Parker and Spider-Man, you'd get his alter ego, Clark Kent wooing Lois Lane and being like this nebbish guy, and turns to, you don't get that. There's a juxtaposition between them. That's not here. So he's just 100% just, hey, heroic He-Man, how's it going? So I think that's what's lost by kind of losing the lore. But that's why slotting in Julie and Kevin, the teenagers, you need to have him have push off of something, and pushing off him being on this alien world and making friends with these new characters. I do enjoy them hanging out with each other. And some people think Dolph Lundgren does a terrible job here. I think he's fine. I don't think it's the deepest script. Like, what else would you have him do here that would win you over to him doing like a great job? It's just kind of like perfunctory, like buff swords guy.
What was strange to me is the focus on Julie and Kevin's relationship.
Let's unpack this, because they're not introduced until around 20 minutes. And the movie's an hour and a half. So it's a pretty big amount of time to not have your maybe main characters, to Andreas's point. And I'd say, like, well, what's their journey? So Kevin's a musician, and the cosmic key plays like tones, plays notes. So later on, his musical know-how is going to help save the day. That's how they're going to go back, and He-Man's captured. They're going to go save him. Okay, that works. What the heck is Julie's journey in this film?
Well, to go to the very end, which I completely did not remember either. She goes back to the day that her parents died and was basically able to stop them from dying. But she's nothing but a damsel in distress.
But my point is, she doesn't, like, what does she earn?
Yeah.
That she's completely, like, she tries to help He-Man at one point, and she gets hit by like a laser blast and she has an infection. She basically sits the climax out. She doesn't do anything. So it's like, she's brave and she's kind, and she's not somebody you want to see suffer, and she gets that hero moment at the end. But to your point, they're set up to, like, okay, He-Man's this guy that can do everything and everybody thinks he's heroic. Great. There could have been a story there where he inspires these everyday people to be better versions of themselves, and then they have to step up and be heroic in the end. And Kevin kind of does that, but the Courtney Cox completely sidelined. And also, as a kid, I hated it when you'd have a Spider-Man movie or just superhero, just slot any superhero, and they'd only be in it for 5 minutes. And the rest of it would be like Peter Parker, and just because, like, for budget reasons. And also, as an actor and actress, you don't want your face covered up the whole time. So you're only going to have to use that sparingly. Part of me likes that He-Man is just He-Man, but I don't think that helps the script out at all, if that makes sense.
I don't mind that, because I think there could be something you could do with that. Like, let's say he does end up on Earth, and again, going back to his mom being an astronaut, maybe he's searching for something there, trying to find like where he really came from. Or even keeping what the plot is in this current film, he happens to come to Earth, and within that, he decides to do that. And maybe Julie could help him along that journey instead of, hey, we're stuck here because we don't have a key. We got to figure out a way to get home. But I also want to go back to the wound on Julie's leg. That thing was gnarly.
That was a great 80s practical effect. Yeah.
Gaping, porous. That was a lot of the budget right there. But I also, they make it a big point where Kevin's like, we need to get her to Eternia to help her with this wound because the poison's taking over. And then all of a sudden we cut to the end scene where Julie and Kevin are saying goodbye, and she's fine.
The sorceress did her thing, So.
Yeah, but also Lubic decides to stay out of nowhere. Like, there's a lot missing. I feel like they definitely cut a lot out.
Look, Lubic looking at 80s America or Eternia, I think you made the right choice.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that.
All right. So, and also the other thing, I'm sorry, I just remembered. You're missing the natural fish out of water comedy of bringing this people. Now, and a scene I like is, they just got there. They're hungry. So Julie works at this chicken and ribs place, and they got these big buckets of like chicken and ribs. So Gwildor has a grappling hook, and he uses the grappling hook to pull over, a box of like meat, just like cooked meat. And Tila and Man-at-Arms, they're hungry, so the three of them sit down to start eating, and they dive in. Tila's like, why do they serve it on these white sticks? And Man-at-Arms, who's a soldier who probably had to eat and rough it here, he's like, those are bones. And Tila and Gwildor are horrified because I guess they're vegetarians over in Eternia. That's a great little detail, and I like how that's discovered through the action of it. And the other two stop eating, and they don't even get into it, but you also get a little bit more of a backstory of Man-at-Arms. Here's somebody that must have had to rough it back in the day, and he knows exactly what this is, and he'll eat it with Rick. It's food. I have to eat this food. That's a nice little scene. They don't really do anything else like that. Like, it's not like Gwildor is amazed later when Kevin has like a keyboard. That's cool, but like, put more details. Like, you've set this up with this alien world for them. They do not pay it off to the amount they should.
They definitely should have played with that a little bit more. I also wanted to bring up something that I learned only in my research after this rewatch. A decree from Mattel was He-Man can't kill. And in one of the making of documentaries I watched, the director said that Mattel kept telling him He-Man can't kill. So they created these robot soldiers that everyone said they copied stormtroopers from Star Wars. Greg, I had no idea that those were supposed to be robots.
I thought they were dudes. When you just were saying that, because I was like, he totally kills that guy in the hover. So
he kills a lot
I guess
of
they're
them.
Robots, but
and they don't act like robots at all.
There are human. I'm sorry. There's Eternians in those outfits for sure.
Yeah. And we'll shout out crew later, but I did want to mention William Stout, who's the production designer. He was not the original production designer. He was hired to do the storyboards. And once the original production designer was let go, because apparently that person wasn't a fan and just wasn't getting it, William took on the role. And then he reached out to famed comic artist Mobius. Are you familiar with Mobius?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
William asked Mobius to do a version. And from that image, the design of the feature film version of He-Man came about. Having that specific costume design that's completely different from anything we've seen before in any of the toys or the cartoons. Doesn't have that red crest on the chest. So all of that was because the production designer wanted to try something different.
Huh.
I found that very interesting. And I was surprised that Mattel let it go that way. But I feel like they probably were seeing it as, oh, but we can turn this into a toy. So in researching this, I actually learned that Gwildor and Orko meet in Masters in the Universe Revolution, which is a miniseries. I thought it was a full animated series, but it's a 5-episode miniseries that's executive produced by Kevin Smith. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
I only had time to watch the episode where they meet because I was so curious about it. It's episode 3.
Orko strangled Gwildor?
Yeah. So when the episode started, I didn't know what was going on, but I had to witness this meeting of minds. And I won't say too much other than it really plays up the sorcery/science dichotomy in the universe, where in this episode, Orko represents sorcery and Gwildor represents science, and they do not get along. There are some quips back and forth between the two, and the episode actually ends on a pretty massive cliffhanger where Man-at-Arms has to rush off, but before he does, he turns to Orko and Gwildor and says, "Learn to work together somehow. The fate of Eternia depends on it."
Whoa.
So I think, Greg, the fate of this podcast depends on us working together. So be cool.
Which one of us is Gwildor in this situation?
Well, hashtag justice for Orko, my friend.
Wow. I'm gonna try and work through that slight. One thing is, I believe now. Look, if you guys have seen the show, get back to us. I think what they play out in that Kevin Smith series is, in the show, Tila is, drumroll, the sorceress's daughter, and Man-at-Arms is her adopted father, and that's brought up in the original show, and I don't believe it's ever revealed to her in the classic series, and I think that's a major plot point when they brought it back, and it's her kind of coming into her own. I love that as an idea. Again, we've talked before about finding time to sit down and watch TV shows, but I think that's a great way to dust it off if you're going to continue the old show.
There was definitely some inventive stuff in the episode, and again, that cliffhanger that it ended on held my attention. And if I have time, I'm definitely want to go back and start from the beginning and actually watch it.
Short ends on the revised He-Man, but I'll just add before we get into categories. So they discussed maybe doing a sequel, and if they did a sequel, that maybe it would have been directed by Albert Pune. What a missed opportunity, because he had a great background in Sword and Sorcery. He did marvelous lower budget science fiction projects. I would have loved to see what that would have looked like, but what can you do? What can you do?
One other thing I just want to mention quickly from that documentary, J. Michael Straczynski, who is a massive comic book writer, a well-respected showrunner and writer in TV, he wrote on a good amount of He-Man and She-Ra original animated episodes, and I wasn't aware of that, but he put it best. He said, "When He-Man says, 'I have the power,' it's saying to the kids, you don't have to do what you're told anymore. You can be your own person. The idea of being transformed into your own inner true self with power, with agency over yourself and your life is very attractive." And I think that's why a lot of people were fans of He-Man and She-Ra.
Oh, well put. Okay. Heart of the film.
I'm going to pull up a potential t-shirt quote, and it's Man-at-Arms saying, "Live the journey, for every destination is but a doorway to another."
That's lovely. I'm going to say, conquering the universe means nothing if you don't have a buddy to share it with.
Oh,
what I mean
like
by that is, we can talk about our other boy, that's not Gwildor, Skeletor, who on this rewatch really doesn't seem to want to kill He-Man. He is going out of his way to keep He-Man alive. Now look, he's putting on a pretense. He's doing his act. He's having He-Man captured. He's talking a big game. But every time they're like, "Hey boss, should we just kill this guy?" He's like, "No, no, 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 no." And I feel like he has this cosmic power. Major, again, a potential t-shirt quote, but not my choice. "Tell me about the loneliness of good, He-Man. Is it equal to the loneliness of evil?" And then they're interrupted by an action scene. But part of me is like, Skeletor, expand on that. What's going on over there, buddy? He seems like a very lonely guy.
There is a moment when He-Man is getting whipped. You see Skeletor wincing with him.
Yeah.
And he asks, "Where's your power? Why aren't you fighting back?"
And at one point they're like, "We have to do this." He's like, "Not without He-Man." There's a lot of where's He-Man? Where's my buddy He-Man? So it's a very codependent relationship. But yeah, he's an evil dude. He might blow up, an underling for doing nothing wrong. Still not happy about that.
I will say, though, in that documentary, they did interview Frank Langella, and he might come up in another category. But to answer your question of where that sort of line came from, he did talk about how he and the director really went through each line to make sure it fit the character. And in that process, they went to Joseph Campbell and the hero with 1,000 faces. And according to Langella, that's where the line, "Tell me about the loneliness of good, He-Man. Is it equal to the loneliness of evil?" came from.
Well, it works. And look, I love little stuff. Again, that's why I think this is a good pizza and a Pepsi play. Because look, not the best screenplay in the world. Yes, it's Timu, He-Man, and for all the things we're discussing. Every now and then, a performance beat will hit, or you'll see a creature design, like the Mercenaries. You're like, "That's a cool looking mercenary." There's enough, I've seen enough A, Star Wars ripoffs, B, Conan ripoffs, and this is a bit of both. Yeah. And it did not deliver at all. And it's people running around like a rock quarry and it's like a lot of exposition, whatever. And like for all this faults, this is never boring. And again, just going back to that line, you hit me with a line like that, and I'm like, that's pretty good. Favorite scene.
So this might be a Greg. We'll see how you feel about
We're
it.
getting to the point where you've done it more than I have. But all right, I'm gonna let it as the Gwildor of this episode. I'll let it slide.
Why, thank you, Gwildor.
All you Reeldeemers fans, I would wear a shirt where it's my face merged into Gwildor.
Someone needs to make that shirt and send it to us right away. Okay, so the couple of scenes that I like, when Julie is alone in the gym and the mercenaries arrive, they attack her in the gym and tear it up, end up attacking the gym teacher. All the way through, she runs into an alley. There's a moment where He-Man comes to save her, and he has a fight with Blade in the alley. And I thought the sword fight is really, really good and really fun. So if I had to pick a part of that, it would be the sword fight. But I do like the moment they arrive because it's played up almost like a horror movie in the gym.
Well, that's actually mine. He-Man versus the mercenaries.
Awesome.
It's, again, He-Man shows no fear. He-Man is stoic throughout. But it's a nice dichotomy of there's Courtney Cox's Julie. I think we've mentioned young Courtney Cox doing a great job as teenage Julie. Fleeing, there's your person in peril. And then what do you want in a movie like, Master of the Universe? You want the hero coming in for the rescue. And here he is against these like mutants and these freaks and the swordsmen. And it's him like holding them all off. And then like she ends up getting like a blaster and she's helping him out. Very nice. And there's other cool moments. I like, He-Man's big sword fight against, Skeletor at the end. There's like a battle throughout the city where the hoverboards, there's an attack on like a record store. Again, like there's a lot of juice here that I think like, oh, that works. But that scene, that's like to me the most heroic moment of the whole film.
Agreed. And, I did like the hoverboard scene where He-Man jumps on it and he's taking people out and then uses the grappling hook to grab the key from Evelyn. Sure, the effects are super dated, but just thinking about the budget they had, it actually looks pretty good for 1987. I thought it was a fun scene, but in the back of my head while I was watching that, I just kept thinking, where the hell are the people in this town?
Well, that's a funny observation because it totally is a budget thing. I wouldn't say you get the whole city because you don't, but I think let's have this, melee at the high school. Let's have this, the record store under attack. Kevin in the house. They do, again, enough to give it a little bit of life versus just like one location. And that's where the whole movie takes place. So again, it's just, I know I've used it on the podcast before, but there's certain movies, glass half full, glass half empty. The glass half empty is, yes, a more fully realized city. And there's people fleeing in distress. The other one is Eternia. Eternia, whenever Skeletor is addressing the citizens of Eternia, it's like 5 people off to the side. You never that's not a fully realized world. Yes, those elements, those little pieces of business would totally kick this up a notch. I don't disagree at all, but at least with what we have, they try and give it a little bit of energy.
I also wanted to call out the rooftop fight is pretty badass when He-Man's fighting the soldiers on the rooftop before he gives up his sword.
They keep like dogpiling on him and like, well, that's it. And then he keeps fighting them off. And finally, he only relents when his friends are imperiled.
Yeah, I love that moment because it just shows his strength. And then you had mentioned the fight between Skeletor and He-Man, and I did want to mention something else. Langella said that he had prepped to shoot a massive battle in the end, but it was scrapped because of the budget. And they were also filming on 110-degree sets with no air conditioning.
All right, favorite shot.
So actually, my favorite shot is when Skeletor is addressing the people of Eternia. There's one shot where we see He-Man on a cliff with his back to us and his red cloak blowing in the wind, watching a massive image of Skeletor's head beaming a message for all Eternia in the foreground. That is the first time we see He-Man, and I thought it was such a cool introduction to him.
Now, a lot of times our favorite shot's our favorite shot. And a lot of times it's based around something very artful or something, like beautiful, or it conveys something or a character beat or whatever. Absolutely, 100%. But it's our favorite. And sometimes that can be something that brings us the most joy. And I'm going to go to the part that I rewound the most. It's when Detective Lubic is playing on the cosmic key and he's like delighted at the tone he made. He presses it and he just starts, this guy's been gruff up to this point, but just something about playing that cosmic key, he just starts laughing. He's so happy. And then he's right back to being gruff again. And I'm like, oh, what a delightful, hey, look at Lubic there. Sorry, I'm sorry, that's mine.
That is great. One other shot I wanted to call out just for the detail of it, because I do love that. So there's a point where basically the key that Gwildor and Kevin have is broken. So they have to sort of MacGyver a key together using a keyboard from Earth and some other gadgets that Man of Arms and Tila have. Once they finally get it to work and they basically warp back into Skeletor's throne room, I love that there's a piece of the building and half of the pink Cadillac has come with them to show that it wasn't a perfect door, but it was enough to get them there. And that's just a great little detail to show that.
I agree. MVP.
I'd be very surprised if we had different answers. It's Frank Langella, Skeletor.
Isn't it? Look, guys, if you listen to our Cutthroat Island episode, please do. You'll know that Frank Langella is an MVP at playing these villain roles. Now, I think what's important to point out here is Skeletor starts the movie very powerful. Skeletor, base level, powerful. Skeletor has taken over the Sorceress, even more powerful. Skeletor gets the power sword of He-Man, even more powerful, and then that leads to the forces of the universe channeling through him, where it changes his outfit, it's gold, and now he's like supremely powerful Skeletor. Observation number one, he goes from throwing purple lightning to gold lightning? Like what? Okay, you have this, what is your major, what does he do with this massive power? Listener, I would argue nothing of consequence. Two, so He-Man's friends come to save him, there's like a shootout, and He-Man gets himself free. Nothing has really changed. All that's happened is now there's a few people toting blasters, and your arch foe who's good with a sword is standing right in front of you. By all account, Skeletor still has the power of the universe. I like the Evil Lyn and some of the mercenaries just peace out.
Yeah.
Before he's defeated, Evil Lyn knows he's a jobber, and she's like, well, he's gonna fuck this up. Let's get out of here. he's still all powerful. Why are you giving up so easy? Because she knows He-Man has his number, and Skeletor really doesn't want to win. That would be my answer.
Well, she knows that there's only one thing more powerful than the entire universe to defeat someone, and that is budget cuts.
I was gonna say love. He loves He-Man. He doesn't really want to kill him, but you're right. The budget cuts too.
So Langella said that his son was a He-Man freak. He wasn't a fan of Skeletor, but he ran around in his pajamas and a little sword and yelled, "I have the power." So when he was offered the role, he could not say no. He didn't read it. He hadn't met the director yet, but he had to do it for his son, who apparently saw it at a private screening and slept through it.
Oh, no.
Langella also said it took weeks for them to figure out the look for Skeletor. He said it was about 20 different prosthetic looks that they experimented with before settling on the look we see in the film. He also had a tendency to improvise, and he says that he, quote, worked really hard to find an original way to be that sort of cliche of the evil villain who wants to rule the world. He says, it's one of my favorite roles, remains so, and will be so for the sheer bravura of it. I like bravura acting. The older I get simpler and simpler. I loved the role because I felt as long as I stayed tasteful within his majesty and size, I could go to the moon with him. And what we get out of that is probably the most memorable character of the film.
Now, I will say it's also interesting that Skeletor is very different than Dog from Cutthroat Island. So two very big performances, to him aiming for the rafters, but like he brings different things to him because he's a good actor.
Yeah.
But this might be the part of the podcast where we fight, because I've got an upset MVP.
Whoa. Okay.
Now, I went into this expecting Langella, and I know how good Langella is, and you're 100% on with everything you said about him there. And again, he's coming into this from Cutthroat Island, and that's where I thought it was going to be. But on this rewatch, I have to give it to
Greg. If you say Gwildor,
James Token as Detective fucking Lubic, who is stealing the show from underneath swordsmen and mutants and robots. And so you don't need a cop in this story, or if you have a cop, he could just be straight up comic relief reacting to everything. I think he's giving it's broad, the whole movie's broad, but a relatively grounded performance. Like, what are these teenagers doing? Who's blowing up my city? The other cops don't believe him, to him desperately trying to convince the other police force that something's happening. And then, as you said earlier, he gets whisked away to Eternia when they use the key again. He is thrown smack dab into a battle, and he has a shotgun. he's like, people are fighting, goes, nobody takes pot shots at Lubic. And then it's him with a big hero moment taking out goons with a shotgun. And at the end, he decides, I'm just going to stick around Eternia. He is having a ball. I really enjoy him here. Here's what decided, because I was going back and forth. I feel like Skeletor is wonderfully one note. Villain who wants to conquer the universe. That's it. Lubic, I'm seeing the funny side of him. I'm seeing the dramatic side of him. I get to see him relaxed at the end. I feel like I'm getting more facets of Lubic through Tolkien's performance. So this rewatch, but like it's really a flip a coin. They're both great, but I want to give him his flowers.
I feel he brings the appropriate amount of humor and sort of angry humor that this film needed. And I almost wish that Kevin was a little bit that way too.
Well, that Kevin's generic nice teenager, you know, and Courtney Cox is Julie, generic. I mean, she's got a tragic backstory. I mean, that's interesting. But again, I feel like Tolkien is making a meal of what he is given. And maybe the script doesn't allow them to do that. I fully acknowledge that. But he is stealing scenes from some crazy stuff happening off to the side. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Underrated element.
I'm going to go with art direction and production design. I really love the Eternia elements, the world created in just a few scenes. Sure, you have a simple idea, you know, obviously hindered by budget, but there's enough there. And the throne room is so cool, and their costumes, that all works for me.
No, again, glass half full, glass half empty. I think this works. I think you can see it has budget limitation. Using that, again, in Skeletor's mask, I don't think Skeletor's mask is the most realistic looking thing in the world, but it works. I'm not like, it doesn't take me out of the movie. I'm like, Frank Langella in a Halloween mask. It's a cool mask. And so it's not photorealistic, and there's a charm to it. Again, look, we haven't seen the new movie. Maybe the new movie's great. But just because you have a photorealistic Skeletor doesn't mean that performance is going to be any more memorable than what he's doing up there with that type of mask. So no, I think the art direction is fantastic with what they were given. I'm going to go Meg Foster as Eva Lynn. And again, in a very similar position to Ewok's Battle for Endor, the right-hand witch having some interesting stuff to do, but maybe just with a little bit more oomph, they could have gone to that next level. So again, she cares about Skeletor. She's excited he's going to win, and he kind of pushes her away. I think you could see that the wheels are always turning behind her eyes. In some ways, she's more competent than he is. I like how she's commanding the mercenaries around. She comes up with a trap that captures Julie to try and get the cosmic key. I just always like her as a presence. And I think she's here. She's got a big role. I wish she had a little bit more to do. I think it's similar to my Battle for Endor critique. It seems like you had it, it's good, but like that third act, maybe there was just another level you could have hit. But she always has a presence. And I met her at a film festival, and so sweet. And when I walked up, like as I started talking to her, she made sure to take both of my hands and look me in the eyes as I was like talking to her. And she was eating candies, and like she's like, here, have these candies. She gave me the candies. And then when I told Larissa who she was, she goes, "You took candies from Evil Lynn?" I'm not sure that's a good idea. Very charismatic, and I think that comes through here, and it's needed because again, I think her part's a little underwritten, but she does the best with what she's given.
That's amazing. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that. And, you know, she also knows the right time to leave the party.
Skeletor's going to mess this up again. Goodbye. So.
Whenever there's any sort of lightning being shot or an explosion, they show several characters reacting. They sort of shield their eyes or they duck. Evelyn does not even blink or look away. Oh. I noticed that several times. So I think that also just emphasizes how badass she is.
Also, I don't know where else to put it. Also, shout out to Charlie. I forgot about Charlie, the record store owner. And he's got more of a part than you'd think, but then he kind of just disappears. So he's certainly not Lubic level. He's there. He's in the movie. They end up going back to Charlie's to get the keyboard that's going to help save the day, but they don't even show him, and his shop gets trashed. So I don't know. He does a good job. It's just like not the biggest role in the world, but he's in more of the movie than I remember.
He's not reacting at all to the sounds of his shop getting blown to hell.
Very chill. Also in that scene, I like the gun gets knocked out of, like Lubic's gun is taken, then it's knocked around on the floor, and Gwildor is packing heat. I could on the shirt with me where it's my face over Gwildor, have me holding the gun in that scene and Gwildor underneath. That's the t-shirt. All right, we'll work on that. Okay, well that's who's having the most fun. Buddy, it's Billy Barty as Gwildor, baby. Now, to the unrefined, perhaps this would be an obnoxious performance, possibly Billy Barty was up for a Razzie for his performance as Gwildor. But to you, I say, it's the Masters of the Universe movie. He's playing an intergalactic dwarf. This is exactly the type of energy this performance requires. So I think he is like no notes. This is what his name is Gwildor. This is what a Gwildor should be doing in a Masters of the Universe film. And maybe that's my hot take of the episode.
Yeah, of course that's what Gwildor is going to do. He's not my pick for who's having the most fun, but I'm with you. I think this is what the character of Gwildor needs to do. And again, going back to that one episode I saw of Masters of the Universe Revolution, I did like what they were building with sort of sorcery versus science with Orko and him. And again, I want to go back and check that out because I think it'd be fun to see those two characters together. My pick for who was having the most fun is James Tolkien as Lubic. And I don't think I can say anything better than what you said for him as MVP. He's having a blast here. Most people might know him as the principal in Back to the Future or Stinger in Top Gun. And sadly, he passed away in March of this year. But anytime he's on screen in any film, he gives a memorable performance.
Agreed. What scene would you show someone to hook them?
I'll be boring and just say my favorite scene, the fight in the alley. I think that, again, is a really effective fight scene showing He-Man in conflict with these mercenaries. And I think anyone who sees that will want to see the rest of it. And it's also short enough, maybe just specifically the fight with Blade, because it's just short enough to entice someone.
Well, you touched on it earlier. I'm going to go with connected to that scene, the mercenaries attacking the high school. Because I think it's maybe more intense than you're expecting and kind of plays out like a horror movie. They decimate that place. That's great. Like the school ends up getting set on fire. And I think that whets your appetite to kind of lead you into the scene that you just discussed. But that whole sequence, I think, is the best part of the movie, as you stated earlier.
Yeah.
Also, I have to say while we're here, so they beat up the janitor, and when he's being wheeled out to the ambulance, Kevin's like, Carl, what happened? And he goes, you don't never want to know. That's a good quote from Carl, like a guy who just got beat up by monsters. So, however, not my t-shirt quote, which is Skeletor's, I must possess all or I possess nothing. Again, I think Skeletor needs to sit down with a therapist and kind of work out some of this stuff. But what was yours?
My t-shirt quote was, only one of you, Kevin, only one of anybody.
Sounds good.
Which is from Gwildor.
Our boy Gwildor. All right. Well, this actually leads in. Are there any Oscars you would give this?
Production design to William Stout. Again, like I mentioned, he wasn't the original production designer. What he was able to pull out with such a small budget on this movie, it's really impressive. And they worked in the art department and as a concept artist in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Conan the Barbarian, First Blood, and Conan the Destroyer.
Oh, nice. I definitely see the Conan elements.
So yeah.
Get it. Maybe we should do Conan the Destroyer. I like everyone loves Conan the Barbarian. That's like the gold standard for like sword and sorcery, like the 80s, and a ton of imitators. But people hate on Conan the Destroyer. I think Destroyer's got some finer points we could go over. But
I haven't seen it.
Have you seen Barbarian?
I have. I love Barbarian. Conan the Barbarian is fantastic.
No, that's great. And look, Destroyer's no Barbarian, but it's fun. Let's stick that in our back pocket.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Gwildor Award. It's just him. He's the only person up for it. They invite him up on stage. They give him a gold cosmic key. He talks for 5 minutes. Then they start up the band and play him off and make him get off the stage. But the Gwildor Award at next year's Oscar. All right. We always wrap up with a crew shout out. And I'm going with Richard Sponder as Pigboy. I bet you didn't think we were going to talk about Pigboy, listeners. Well, guess what? Here he is. They had a contest where a kid could be in the movie. Sponder won, and he is Pigboy, who is holding Skeletor's staff when Skeletor gets back. So he's not really prominent, but he's there, and there's a guy named Pigboy.
I was wondering about that because they made such a point to show that character holding the staff and Skeletor snatching it out of his hands. That's amazing. So someone won that? It was a contest?
Yep.
I had no idea. That's awesome. And how jealous are we that we weren't Pigboy?
One day I'll be Pigboy.
It's our other Reeldeemers t-shirt.
So I get my Gwildor and you're the Pigboy.
Yeah, my face.
Shirts, the front and the back of the shirt.
It's a reversible shirt.
Yeah.
My face on the inside with one day I'll be Pigboy.
I need to come up with my Gwildor quote, but I'm like, don't worry, guys. We'll post on our socials what I'll be saying with that Gwildor pack and eat.
Nice. My crew shout out is Michelle Moen, who's the visual effects matte artist. They did matte painting for several other films, including Blade Runner, Ghostbusters, The Monster Squad, Dick Tracy, Batman Returns, and many, many more great films.
That's one heck of a resume. That's great.
You know, just looking over my notes, I realized we haven't talked about this. Bill Conti did the music.
Yes. Grow us. Great note. And it's a good score.
It's a good score, but I did feel like the opening titles felt like they wanted to emulate Superman, the Donner film.
Yeah, I mean, Conti's a legend. They're great. I don't know if this is their finest hour. Again, like, look, it's trying to be Star Wars. It's trying to be Conan. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, hey, make the music sound like Superman.
Sure, but I'm really surprised they didn't use the cartoon theme. That, to me, I could still hum that right now. You know, that stayed with me.
No, Conti's fantastic. It's good. Good score. Also a good call out.
It's funny. I had some doubt about watching the new Masters of the Universe in theaters. I was going to wait till it hit streaming, but rewatching this version and then delving into some research about the toy and watching that documentary, I watched some of the original animated cartoon episodes. I also checked out a bit of some of the more modern cartoons like I talked about. The nostalgia got to me. It brought me back to when I was a kid and would get excited by seeing that packaging for the action figure. The cartoon played such a big part of my childhood. I want to see the new one now. It's getting me a little excited to see it. And had you asked me a week ago, I probably would have said I'd see it at some point, but I think that's what they're banking on, to hit that nostalgia.
I have no idea how this sucker's going to do. It's like, again, it's nostalgia bait for people like us, but as you just said, not really on your radar until we cover this. So I don't know. So maybe you'll be hearing from Masters of the Universe Part 2 when we cover this movie in a couple months. We'll see. But I don't know. Maybe it'll make money hand over fist.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have no idea. I know people who want to see it. I know people who have no interest in seeing it. And again, I feel like I'm always against the nostalgia bait. But if you want to see it for nostalgia's sake, that's okay.
Now you can pull off Mechanic. Now you can pull off Ram Man. You know, like that's not something you were going to get in the 87 version. If you were going to get it, it was going to look awful. And maybe that's also charming. It's no way. Don't get me wrong. But like now you can do it with digital effects. Now, whether or not it works, that's a whole other question, but you can do it. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what they pull off. Not if
they certainly have the budget for it. So hopefully with a good amount of budget, they're able to give us a story that we're not expecting and then we can enjoy for years.
My final thought on this is a good hanging out with your friends, eating a bucket of popcorn type of flick. It is not high art. It is not Star Wars. It is not Conan. I mean, like those, it was following in the footsteps of some great flicks and some great properties. And it's not the cartoon. It's not what we grew up with. But as again, the canon studio's interpretation of He-Man, I think there's a lot of charm here at the same time. And we would never recommend anything that wasn't at least some fun. I do think this is fun.
It's fun. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. No one should be able to take your joy away. Keep it. It's yours. You are your joy. As Gwildor said, there's only one of you. There's only one of anybody.
Oh, tear. I'm not sure if you guys can see me, but tear rolling down my cheek. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Reeldeemers. If you enjoyed what you heard, please support us by leaving a like, subscribe, or review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. You can find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to reach out and send a comment, you can email us at reeldeemers@gmail.com. Our music is by Adolfo Delanoy, and you can check him out on Instagram at Adolfo Delanoy. Good journey.